market now. Apart from that, we will be also talking about trade, cross-border issues in terms of payment, etc., and key achievements as well in recent times which we have made together. So starting with, I will invite Ambassador Ray, Rajit Ray sir, to kindly present his views on the development.
I thought you were going to ask a question.
Questions, sir?
Yeah.
So particular questions. Yes. So let's talk about two particular issues. First is payment, and second is, of course, energy sector cooperation. In recent times, we have seen so many good news coming in from both sides, and India is going to open its market. Agreed in that. The question is directed to both of you. So, would like to get a feel out of you from both of you about the recent developments at the front of payment system as well as energy sector. We'll start with you, Yusuf, then.
Well, first of all, thank you, and it's a pleasure to be on this panel. I think a lot of great things are happening at the bilateral level between the two countries, and I feel so optimistic. Recently, I saw the tweet Ambassador Sharma had put out on the Panchaleshwar project, and it's really, I think it's going to be, as he said, a game changer. It will transform the economies of Sudur Paschim and of Kumaon in Uttarakhand, and bring enormous benefit, I think, to both countries. So it's not just a question of economic benefit, but I think strategically also, this project will have huge spin-offs. And I think, it will convince all the naysayers, in the countries that say that we shouldn't have such projects. I think once this project fructifies and, people see the benefit, the development of infrastructure, the resources coming in, I think it's going to really transform the relationship between the two countries. And this, of course, is at a very sort of macro level. I think Ambassador Sharma already spoke about this regional electricity grid. So I, dream of a time when Nepalese electricity is sold through India, not only to Myanmar, but perhaps further into some of the other ASEAN countries, or even through India, and if Sri Lanka joins the electricity grid. So can you imagine how strongly the countries of this region will be tied in to each other? और मुझे लगता है कि with this economic cooperation, a lot of the political issues, psychological issues जो है relationship में, they will also get resolved. So great thing. And of course, UPI, I have already spoken about financial connectivity. And I think at a people-to-people level, this is probably one of the most significant developments that has happened in Ambassador Dr. Sharma's tenure. And I think this also, at the level of the people, will really transform the relationship.
Just a follow-up question on this before I will come to say. It's often said that it's not regional grid here. It is India-led market is always here, in energy sector particularly. What's your views on this?
Why did you say India-led? I mean, Bangladesh needs to buy power. At a later date, when things improve, Pakistan is a huge market for power. So I don't rule out these possibilities. If you're looking at the next 40, 50 years, the market is only going to increase and develop. I mean, you have, e-vehicles are going to come in from the, 2030s.
The process has already started.
Yeah, so the demand is only going to increase, and there's no question.
So it can be achieved, I think, 10,000 megawatt of import from Nepal. It comes on competitive terms.
I hope so very much, and I believe there are some issues. I've been reading some of the Nepalese newspapers, some issues, but hopefully they'll all get sorted out.
Your views on the same question.
Yeah. Thank you, Atulji. Thank you for having me in this panel discussion. I also would like to reiterate what Ambassador Ranjit Ray was mentioning earlier. There are so many things. I think I just mentioned that there were about 13 MOUs, agreement and inaugurations that were done in the economic areas during the Nepal's Prime Minister's visit to India very recently. Last year, I think I came with the Prime Minister of Nepal at that time, Honorable Sherbahadur Deuba. And then there were so many agenda. And then I wanted to see many of these things being happen. At least I was saying that at least 60% of those agendas should be addressed. So that's why that was my argument with the government of India. And then they were saying that nothing was initiated for the first 3 or 4 months. And then all of a sudden they were saying that I think our relation has been so cordial. So why only 60%? We can go even more, 100%. Why not? Why don't we try for 100% of the agenda to be resolved and addressed? So on that context, I think I don't want to go into details what happened in between. But very recently, I guess, with both the efforts and support of Government of India, Ambassador Naveen Srivastava in Nepal, and the team members of the energy team in both sides, I think they have been agreed to have at least 10,000, strive for 10,000 megawatt of export from Nepal to India in the next 10 years. So I think that is something, I would say, one of the game changers, no doubt about that. And eventually, I think it has been agreed that there will be a kind of tripartite meeting between Nepal, India and Bangladesh so that Nepal can also initiate, because they don't have enough transmission line at present between Bangladesh and India. So just to initiate 40 megawatt or 50 megawatt in the initial stage, it has also been agreed, but now we have to have the final agreement, tripartite agreement between the 3 countries. But under the framework of, I think Atulji was asking the same question, under the framework of BBI and BIMSTEC, all these countries, they would like to be connected with the electricity grid in the region. So that will be a big win-win situation to energy importers in the region, as well as countries like Nepal. Nepal is trying to export energy, especially electricity, as much as possible. So that has already been initiated. Yes, I think India has taken the lead, but when I talk to different ambassadors of the region, they are very much interested to import electricity from Nepal to respective countries in the region. So I think that's something I would say will have a huge opportunity in the coming days and coming years. Now I think there was mention about UPI. Yes, I think in 2021 February there was some agreement between Nepal and India, but nothing moved forward. So I was really surprised, and then when we discussed in the Ministry of External Affairs here, I think there was a kind of agreement, and I agree that these days we don't want to bring cash from India to Nepal, because the people who are working here, they are allowed to bring up to 25,000 Indian currency in cash. So that is always very risky, and they also have some limitations. So why don't we go digital? So I think that was the idea, but the agreement that was done in 2021 February was not going anywhere. So I wanted to find out why, what was the reason, because I found out that Nepal was not highly satisfied with that agreement. So I tried to find out from Nepal Rashtra Bank and the Ministry of Finance, what is the reason, why I think this is not moving forward. So they explained me the reason why I think this is not moving forward. Although I think I mentioned this one to the Finance Minister in India and also with the Information and Technology Minister in India, they were all very supportive. But in the meantime, when I talked to NPIC chief, and then he said, I think we can do another agreement, provided I think these are some of the stakeholders, they agree on it. I talked to all of them, they agree, and then India is also very supportive. I think actually without the support of Ministry of External Affairs, I think things will be much slower. So I think they came up with the idea that, okay, we can have a new agreement. Nepal is very happy, India is very happy, and I also asked with the chief of NPCI, NPIC that how long will it take once we do the agreement? The agreement was done. I think back and forth, there were a couple of meetings, but finally it was done. And he said, he gave me, after the agreement, it will take 9 months, but I have given 1 year. So I think after 1 year, I think we'll have the new dimension in the digital cross-border money transfer between Nepal and India. Not only that, now I asked another question to him because many Nepali people are having problem because they don't have the bank account here. Because to transfer the money, you need to have the bank account from one place to another. If you have the bank account, we have Prabhu Money Transfer, we have IME, number of other organizations even today, SBI Bank. So, but they said this is expensive, digital will be much more easier. And the second thing I found out in India is that you don't need bank account. I have to reconfirm, I have to recheck whether that will still be applicable to Nepal or not. We have to find it out. But the people don't need bank account because there will be a middleman licensed by the government of India. So these people can do it with a very, very nominal price. So I think I'll say there are so many other things, but I would like to stop here. These are two major achievements that will have strong and long-lasting benefits to the both people of Nepal staying in India as well as for the prosperity of the country. Thank you.
We deeply appreciate the developments recently made on both fronts, sir, but practically the overall issue of this payment is not so easy. Because if we talk about formalizing the economy, then we also have to connect it with Aadhaar, etc. At India's side, everything is smooth and it's going in good direction. But in Nepal, both of you will admit is that Nepal has to be little liberal towards a few things. Like even when it comes to digital payment, there is a slab of maximum 50,000 in a day or so. And in today's time, because being a think tank in the investment industry, we keep getting the concerns queries from Nepal. They often say that when it comes to educational needs or hospitalization, etc., the actual requirement is much higher. So that should be considered because that's not something in India is making it 50,000 to minimum 1 lakh rupees. This is the request people also keep getting from our members. And even in terms of carrying the cash, it should be slightly hiked from 20,000 to 50,000 or something. Because in today's time, 20,000 is not sufficient. So something should be done in this direction. About the hydroelectricity corporation, it's going in good direction. Nepal is just not going to export energy to India, it's going to be clean energy, which is the need of power. We don't have any option but to go ahead with that. But the problem remains that there is a dichotomy that at the same time, Nepal is also importing thermal power from Bihar. Bihar grid, which is called Kurkhanati grid. So like, even last year, 500 megawatt or something was imported. What's your view on that contradictory status that we have? And I personally and officially, I believe that 10,000 megawatt is achievable. Export from Nepal to India and Bangladesh.
I think the main issue these days is because in the summertime, all the hydropower, they can run in 100% capacity. But then in the winter time, as we know, I think they can run only up to 30 to 40% capacity. So that's the reason why I think we still need to import during the winter time from India to Nepal. But beginning from, let's say, 2025, according to Nepal Electricity Authority, we may not have to import from India during that time, or alternatively, will be net exporter to India, basically. So it's basically balancing between our peak time and off-peak time. So that's one of the reasons. Coming back to I think UPI issue, I think probably there will be negotiation to increase the limit. But what I found out, the mood in India is that rather than taking the money, let's say, as for example, increasing the cash from 25,000 to 25,000, I think most probably most of the people in India, including the authorities, they are giving the emphasis on bank transactions, the card, as for example, RuPay card or digital transformation and things like that. That may, I think we probably need to strengthen those areas rather than giving emphasis on bringing the cash from Nepal to India, India to Nepal. But talking about education and health, if you have a NOC from the Ministry of Education, any amount, you can bring any amount from India to, Nepal to India, or even from Nepal to US, actually, even today. In the area of health, I found out, I talked to several banks in Nepal, they have to give one simple application in the banks in Nepal, and saying that they are going to India for medical checkup and medical treatment. So if they do that, they will increase the limit in their card. They can pay up to 300,000, 400,000, 500,000. But the only thing, the requirement is that when they go back, they have to give the copy of their prescriptions and expenses to the respective banks. So I think there are already some flexibility, but I think with the UPI we need to do homework on that one. What will be the terms and conditions and agreement? But we are hoping that they will take into consideration all these constraints, and then we'll be able to have much higher amount of transaction between the two countries. Thank you.
The final submission is, apart from rupees 100 denomination, rupees 500 denomination too should be allowed. This is a common perception of the Indian travelers who travel to Nepal. Thank you. Now I will ask a very general question for former MD and CEO on who's Nepal State Bank Limited. So you have had first-hand experience dealing with Nepal last week. And the subject which we have been discussing about the payment system. Would like to know your view on it, about the practical hurdles which we often face as a travelers to Nepal and other way around.
Thank you, Atul-ji, and all my respect to His Excellency Dr. Sharma, Ambassador Jigre, and also Ambassador Puri is not here. I've worked with all of them for a long time, and I've been associated with Nepal banking and e-commerce system now for the last 8-9 years. 5 years I was the MD and CEO of Nepal SBI Bank, and also associated with policy planning on both sides of the border. And then I was heading the largest retail segment of State Bank of India till last year, North Delhi. So we faced all of this problem as one is account opening of Nepalis. How do we do that? The issue which came in is that if we treat them as not a special category as a foreigner, then they need to have two things. One is why they are in India, and then they should be in India for 6 months at least. So accounts could be opened under something called QA22 formalities of RBI. Anybody can open across the world. That is one. But with Nepalis, because there is no visa and those kind of things, so why they are in India needs to be somehow put on paper. So what has happened is now the security risk has come in. A lot of people masquerading as Nepalis from certain countries that I want to mention here. They were the ones who were creating an issue. So we had to be very, very careful. And a lot of genuine Nepalis here did not have the proper documents, were caught in that trap. So the issue is, I'm just suggesting to the powers here that one-to-one with the RBI and NRB, they should give maybe a certification from the side of the Nepal government that these are the people who are coming and working in India for a long time, and they should be allowed to open an account. Although they may come in only occasionally to India, because as Ambassador Ray had said, 160 Indian rupees to 100 Indian rupees to 160 rupees. The peg rate has been there since 1993. So what could be done, and I think it is being talked about in NRB, is that the peg rate would continue maybe for 10 years or 15 years. So that this exchange rate becomes a country-to-country exchange rate, and it doesn't go through the US dollar route. It all goes through the US dollar. So there is one issue which always hinders the cross-border transactions. So what happens if the peg rate changes? Because currently, sir, you will be amazed to know that the Nepali rupee has grown stronger than the Indian rupee, and the exchange rate is on the other than the banking side is 150 rupees to Indian rupee. So for whatever reason, so this requires I'm just talking like a banker. So things have to be as per a system, and these things need to be addressed in whatever way. So that is it, and then the transfer. QR is the way of the future. There is no way we can, and mobile banking is the one which is going to persist. So we have to work towards that. And in India, I was handling the largest retail network. Reserve Bank of India, the Government of India, they do not want us to put in ATM machines. They want us to move to less cash. And this is the way going forward. So transactions, you must have noticed when you are in Delhi and other places, if you have a bank account, it is linked to your UPI. It is seamless. You don't need your credit card, debit card, anything. And if you go to some of the agencies, like we call them banking correspondents, where you just have to put your thumbprint, and any bank account is linked if you have a bank account, and the money is disbursed to you in cash, 10,000 rupees. That one is 10. So actually, you don't need an ATM machine. So we have to move out from those that kind of a thinking. I think a lot of young CAs or CA aspirants are here. This is a new way of thinking. You have to go beyond. That banks will become irrelevant in 10 to 15 years. It will all be embedded finance, and cash will be somewhere outside the scope. So it has to be now. Nepal is also, sir, I think by end of this year or year, they told me. I was in Kathmandu last month. There was some meeting with NRP on the stage, and they said they are coming out with national currency, digital currency from Nepal itself. So actually you don't need cash. It will be transferred somewhere on some system, and people will be holding a wallet with that kind of a cash. Whether it goes to official channel of banking or Prabhu Money or some other, it's the same thing. It is, so the regulations are being built in both sides, one. And second, I was mentioning to Ambassador just now, the new challenge and the latest challenge has come in cyber security. The moment we step out from physical to currency to digital, the whole system changed, because the rest of the world is not, there are a lot of criminals. So we make ourselves very vulnerable. So that is why you find that the NRB may appear to go slowly. It is not so. They are fully aware of it. They are fully aware of everything, but it is point by point it is going there. And sir, I'll just end with this. There are so many people on the panel. Is that as far as maybe public sector banking in India is concerned, the moment everybody comes on board in financial inclusion, you actually don't need public sector here. In Nepal, I think you're much ahead in financial inclusion. Everybody, I believe, is on the financial network somewhere or the other. They are there because 1/3 of the population is not staying in Nepal.
The number of banks is also too.
And 1/3 of the population is not staying in. They stay outside Nepal, work, and they send money to everybody. So actually 1/3 is sending to twice their number. By some way or the other, maybe through Hawala. Somebody gives cash, we give cash. But money comes, so people do know the importance, and high-end phones are available. So the issue there is that financial inclusion is already there in Nepal. How to get it onto the digital side is the challenge.
Thank you, sir. Because we are celebrating the words, the power of words, and also the soft power, which is, I think, that is going to play a catalyst role in further deepening ties between India and Nepal. Now we have 4 more panelists. I will start with Anurag Basnet. He is sort of an iconic editor who should be credited for working with an author like Greta Rana, Pranay Rana, Manjushree Thapa. If I am not wrong, Anurag, you also worked with Manjushree Thapa.
Yes, sir.
And you translated in the popularized books also. But you were instrumental in getting them published, if I'm not wrong, Adramita and others. So now it's complete freedom from economics. Now Mike is in your hand, please. Speak about the philosophy literacy in Nepal, and how the cooperation should reach to the publishing sphere. How the cooperation between India and Nepal should also travel to another territory, that is publishing.
Right. That's like a massive platform or area on which to speak. In terms of culture and in terms of the transference of culture, I think there's traditionally been a lot of interaction between India and Nepal. India is interested, or at least the publishing industry has been interested in writings from Nepal for the last 20-30 years. There has been a resurgence of interest, and I also believe that books that are published in India have a market in Nepal because there are readers everywhere, and Indian publishing brings in a lot of books from elsewhere as well. So the larger publishing houses such as Penguin and HarperCollins, they have these enormous foreign lists where they bring in books that are published elsewhere in the US and the UK, and there is a huge market in Nepal also. I'm sure children in Nepal enjoyed reading, let's say, Harry Potter. So when Harry Potter came in, obviously the route was through India. That's for the English publishing side. I don't really think that there's any problem with interaction or books moving from India to Nepal or even from Nepal to India, because as we've been talking about this, English has become this kind of universal lingua franca, and everybody in many ways is actually compelled to learn English. But moving towards Nepali writing and writing in Nepali from Nepal, there is now a resurgence again of interest in writings from Nepal. So, for instance, we have Vasanta Basnet and Nayan Rasdaiya. Their books are being brought into India, especially in regions where there are Nepali speakers. So I know for a fact that Darjeeling and Kalimpong has a very vibrant reading culture in Nepali, where writers from Nepal are, we eagerly await new writing from Nepal, in Nepali, because why? Because there are, number one, of course, is to know the realities in Nepal. Number one. Number two, I think, is also to understand how our own language is evolving. So my mother tongue is Nepali, even though I was born and brought up in India. So it interests us to know how the language is evolving, in which ways the language is evolving. So and of course, coming to translation, so there is a largish, I would say not a very large, but largish market for translation into English, especially I think not fiction but also non-fiction, because we need to know the neighborhood in that sense. We need to know what's going on. We need to know the political realities, the economic realities. I would imagine a current book on economics in Nepal would have a lot of interest here, because anybody wanting to do business would want to read that book. But the challenges are economic again. While we have interest, while there is interest, there is a lot of movement, but it's not formalized. And we all, and as we've been talking about this on this panel also, the hurdles are essentially economic. So the first thing is, for instance, pricing, right? So the peg rate that we've been talking about, 1:1.6, makes books unaffordable from India. When books travel to Nepal, they become unaffordable to many, because the prices increase by the factor of 1.6. But more than that is the difficulty in the movement that we've been facing over the last many years. So books traveling from India to Nepal take inordinately long times. So when we published, let's say, Manju's books or Prashant Jha, or So the challenge we face is that books get stuck at the border simply for whatever reasons, and sometimes there are no reasons given. And like for instance, recently I translated a book from Darjeeling called Thulange, and it was published by Penguin. So we've been trying to get it to Kathmandu because there is interest in Kathmandu. It was first published out of Kathmandu and by Shangri-La Books. So recently I was speaking to the salesperson in Penguin, and he told me that if you have any event that's happening in Kathmandu, please give me 2 months notice. So when I asked why, because that's how much time it takes.
Supplies have become bad to worse during the COVID time.
Yes. No, I would imagine other things are being supplied readily, I'm sure, right? But books, especially, become a problem. I don't know if it's a policy matter, or if it is just logistical, right? Right. So that's one thing, and so that is basically the challenge in working with.
But fortunately, few new platforms are emerging now, like Kitab Jatra itself, and they have been selling books online. So this is one first
Right.
of its kind in Nepal.
Right.
Everybody has been doing.
So that's one challenge. The other challenge is, of course, the financial challenge of collecting. So if I publish something in India and I sell it in Nepal, how do I collect? So the channels, unfortunately, up until now are largely informal, so to speak. Yeah. So the channels largely remain informal. It becomes difficult to access markets that way. And the accessing of markets is difficult both ways. So if a Nepali publisher wants to work with me in terms of taking up my services as an editor or a translator, again the hurdle is payment, because transferring money from Kathmandu or Nepal to India is expensive through the formal channels, and the informal channels are informal.
From the trade publishing perspective, you should also highlight one more side. That is how to make it feasible, publishing feasible. Because from Nepal, if you will study the last 2-3 decades, entry of all the titles, only 2 or 3 we can count as bestsellers. 7 years back, I wrote an article in Kathmandu Post titled as, if I'm remembering it right, Blossoming Literary Scene in Nepal. So, and I counted that Samrat Upadhyay, Manjushri Tata, and Vinod Chaudhary, who is an university primarily, but his book sold into millions. If not millions, at least many lakhs copies. Possibly, he also supported that book. But his book has been into demand, for sure. So we are not getting so many examples like this quite often. From India, see, books have been in demand which are written on Nepal, like M.S. Ranjit Ray's book, that is well received, Kathmandu Diplomat. And my own book is going to be published by Penguin later this year or early next year. Then from Nepal too, there has been entries like from Sudhir Sarma, Islayami, others. But in terms of sale, I don't think.
Well, so the hurdles are
not even 10,000 marks or something.
Because the hurdles are of pricing more than anything else. The peg rate makes it difficult. So I'll give you an example. So if you have a book that is priced, that is a hardback. So if I want to say that this book deserves a larger platform than others, then I would try to publish it in hardback, right? Pricing in India, recoupment costs. Now imagine $8.99 going into Nepali rupees. That's up by a factor of 1.6. So it immediately puts the book out of reach of many people, especially at a time when book selling is competing with other, or content in books is competing with other content, right? So I think that's one of the reasons why you don't see as much turnover.
On the other side, the books have been well received in India. That's a matter of great satisfaction. Now I will move to Kadambini Sarmaji. He has been a senior journalist working for the leading TV channels like NDTV and others. Kadambini, what is your reading about the changing character of India-Nepal relations?
First of all, thank you, Rishiji and Atulji, both of you. And I've been associated with Kitab Yatra for third successive year in a row. And it was a pleasure to listen to all the esteemed speakers, especially ambassadors, all three of them, Ambassador of Nepal and Ambassador Rai and Ambassador Puri. It has opened new understandings and questions for me. Now, as a journalist, all of you know that most of the journalists are jack of all trade and master of none. So, basically, every day we learn something new, try to unlearn something. And India-Nepal relation for me, it is kind of personal, I must say. क्योंकि अगर आप 17, 18, 20 साल से आप एक स्पेशलाइज्ड फील्ड में काम कर रहे हैं, if you are working on international affairs, then all of us know that usually conflict and differences make great headlines. So mostly it is Pakistan, it is China, and nowadays it's wars and what we haven't been able to achieve. It's never about good things. But Nepal, as far as Nepal is concerned, usually what we see, अगर अखबार में होता है तो it is like शायद 5वें पन्ने पर एक कॉलम की खबर होती है, और टीवी में तो शायद एक टिकर चल जाए तो हम समझते हैं कि हाँ चल गया. मेरे लिए इम्पोर्टेंट है because I come from Bihar and since childhood I have been seeing कि हाँ रिक्शा से चले जाते हैं नेपाल, वहाँ से विराटनगर पहुँच गए, मॉल से खरीद कर कुछ ले आए, ऐसी चीज़ें जो पहले इंडिया में नहीं मिलती थी. I've seen Nepalese people in all walks of life, businessmen in different sorts of jobs. And I remember when I was a kid, my mother used to take me to Patna. There was a very famous beauty parlor to get my hair cut. And the ladies there, they were like very respected experts who do that. And there used to be appointment list even at that time. So that is the kind of connect. What I do not understand is कि अभी हम दुनिया भर से बात करते हैं कि भाई पीपल टू पीपल कनेक्ट होना चाहिए. नेपाल से तो हमेशा से था, हमेशा से रहा है, आज भी है. तो डिस्कनेक्ट क्यों है? What has happened? I think there are so many things. जब आप बहुत करीब होते हैं तो कई बार आप बहुत दूर भी हो जाते हैं. तो वो एक फैक्टर है जिसको शायद दोनों डायरेक्शंस में और शायद इंडिया में ज्यादा एड्रेस करने की जरूरत है. यहाँ पर हम देखते हैं अब जैसे माजपुरी ने कहा कि बहुत सारी चीज़ें हो रही हैं, नई नई तरह की चीज़ें हो रही हैं. उसके पहले हमारे एक स्पीकर थे, उन्होंने बोला कि जो वर्डिंग्स यूज होते हैं उनको एक नया आयाम देने की ज़रूरत है. जैसे मोदी जी ने वहाँ जाकर कहा हिट, जो उन्होंने एक एक्रोनिम दिया. आई थिंक दैट इज इम्पॉर्टेंट क्योंकि Nepal is not the same, India is not the same. We are not the same people. We are looking at the world, it is not the same. हर चीज का जो पहले हम समझते थे, that definition is also changing. Who thought we'll have a war in 2023 and Russia and Ukraine are fighting? उसका असर हमें नहीं लगा था कि भाई यहाँ पर इंडिया में अफ्रीका पर पड़ेगा. अब हम देख रहे हैं कि हाँ ग्रेन डील का असर अफ्रीका में भूखमरी हो सकती है, यहाँ पर चावल का प्राइस बढ़ सकता है. सो दीज आर द थिंग्स वी सी. देयर इज सो मच इंटरकनेक्टेडनेस. और हम जो इतने करीब हैं, इंडिया एंड नेपाल, वी आर सो कनेक्टेड, वी आर सो क्लोज. इट इज लाइक अ होम फॉर both our citizens. Then why do we feel this distance? It boils down to mostly politics. Maybe it is in international politics, it is domestic politics. People come out, the politicians come out with all sorts of statements. वोट मिल जाते हैं, लेकिन जो डिस्टेंस क्रिएट हो जाता है लोगों के बीच, दैट इज समथिंग which is actually carried through the generations. There, this you speak one line, one statement. A person who is in a position of power, he speaks one line, and it reverberates every time there is another event or another someone trying to do something good about both the countries. So we are close, but we still seem to be far away. Now there are so many things which are happening. The PM's visit, which happened recently, it was all in news because of good reasons. That is something to celebrate. बहुत सारे एग्रीमेंट्स हुए, और ये एग्रीमेंट्स ऐसे हैं जो शायद पहले होने चाहिए थे। क्यों अटके हुए थे, उसके अलग अलग उसकी वजह हो सकती है, लेकिन जैसे कई बार बिहार में हम सुनते थे कि भाई नेपाल ने ये नहीं किया तो बाढ़ आ गया। आप लोगों ने भी सुना होगा, सबने सुना होगा, और वहां पे होता है कि नहीं यहाँ पे ऐसा नहीं हुआ तो ऐसे हो गया। दैट डिस्ट्रस्ट, हाउ डिड इट कम अबाउट, क्या हुआ? These are the things which are historical questions, but which are now being addressed. Or Atul said now we are leaving economics. Actually, everything I think boils down to economics. There are so many students here. Why are they here? They are here because of economics. They want a good living standard. They want to study hard. They want to get good jobs. I don't know how many of you want to work on India-Nepal relations. Do you plan to stay here? Do you plan to go to UK or US and all those developed countries? हो सकता है. I mean, nothing wrong with that. But I think for the relation to actually be better, there are 2-3 things which we must do. पहली बात तो ये है कि जो हमारा नया जनरेशन है, जो हो सकता है उनके ऊपर भी जो एक बर्डन ऑफ पास्ट है वो भी कैरी करते हैं, क्योंकि word of mouth matters quite a lot, and they have been hearing from their parents, their grandparents. That needs to change. आप यहाँ के लोग वहाँ जाएं, टूरिज्म इतना कम क्यों है, ये भी सोचने वाली बात है। पहले तो हम यही सुनते थे कि चलो नेपाल चलते हैं, कि वहाँ पे अच्छा काठमांडू जाएंगे, पोखरा जाएंगे। I went to Pokhara after a very long time and I was mesmerized. It's so beautiful. I mean, it's amazing place to be. So ये एक कनेक्ट जो है यूथ के बीच में, दोनों कंट्रीज के बीच, थोड़ा मुझे कम लगता है। जहाँ तक ऑफिशियल्स का, डिप्लोमेट्स का सवाल है, आई वुड अर्ज यू टू एंगेज विथ मीडिया मोर. आई वुड लाइक टू गिव मोर स्पेस टू नेपाल in my reports. I would want to write about it. I would want to shoot Nepal. मुझे लगता है कि क्योंकि सबको ये लगता है, ये फीलिंग होती है कि अच्छा हम तो इतने पास हैं, तो वो कहीं ना कहीं वो ओवरलुक हो जाता है। उसको एक नए नजरिए से देखने की जरूरत है। आई थिंक वी नीड टू वर्क ऑन दैट। थर्ड थिंग, जो इकोनॉमिक्स की बात हमने कही, जो यूपीआई की बात सर ने कही, जो हाइड्रोइलेक्ट्रिसिटी की बात है, ये जितना ज्यादा होगा और जितना सीमलेस होगा, पीपल विल कम क्लोजर, मिसकंसेप्शंस विल मेल्ट अवे. दैट इज the most important factor. The moment you are economically better off, you can see that people actually, even in person-wise, you see people calm down. Then they think more rationally. But अगर every day अगर यही हुआ कि आपकी survival की ही लड़ाई चल रही है, then there's a problem. Then you look at everyone as an enemy. And Anurag ji, you talked about books. यहाँ पे बुक फेयर अभी शुरू हुआ है दिल्ली में, सो आई वुड हैव लाइक टू सी, आई डोंट नो वेदर देयर इज अ नेपाली लैंग्वेज बुक स्टॉल और नॉट. आई वुड हैव लाइक टू सी इट, एंड आई थिंक द ट्रांसलेशंस आर वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. यहाँ तक कि यहाँ पर अतुल जी, आई वुड टेल यू कि हिंदी की किताबें जब हम ढूंढते हैं, सो फॉर दैट ऑल्सो द स्पेस इज सो लिमिटेड, नहीं मिलती हैं किताबें हिंदी की, और जो बिकती भी है वो ट्रांसलेशन बिकती हैं. अभी रंजित राय सर would know that there is an IFS officer, he has published a book of Bihari literature, Abhay. So for the first time I realized that Bihari literature is so rich, and I'm reading the stories and I'm like really it's a pleasure to read. So अगर मान लीजिए हिंदी में नहीं भी हो रहा है, let's have more books translated into English, let it reach to people. Let people develop a taste for it, and then let's go forward from that. Once a habit is built, only after that you can move forward. So these are 3-4 small things, but it is something which boils down to every person. I think these are the things which are most important in the relation between two countries, especially countries like India and Nepal, who are already close. We just need to give a new definition, a new energy to this relation. Thank you.
एक दो चीज़ें हैं जो मैं यहाँ पे शेयर करना चाहूँगा. पहली बात, टूरिज्म, मतलब जो टूरिस्ट का ये है, मतलब नेपाल में विजिट करना इंडिया से कम नहीं हुआ है. एक चीज़ हमें ये देखना होगा, ग्लोबलाइज कितना हुआ है इंडिया 91 onwards, और जो स्पेंडिंग कैपेसिटी है इंडिया का, दैट हैज ग्रोन बाय मोर देन 1000 times, आई थिंक, सिंस 90s. वो एक फैक्टर है. दूसरी बात है जितने भी विजिट्स होते हैं सारे रजिस्टर्ड नहीं होते हैं. जहाँ से मैं आता हूँ मधुबनी, I will go to Jabalpur. That will go unnoticed in the system. Because I will just simply take my car, simply I will go there. Even without taking my car, I can go there.
Yes.
So that's the advantage. एक वो रीजन है कि सारी चीजें रजिस्टर्ड नहीं हो पा रही है. तिरुवन एयरपोर्ट तक जो जाते हैं उनका हो जाता है, साइकिल में मिल जाता है. So ये एक रीजन है. मुझे नहीं लगता कि मैं जनकपुर जब नहीं जाता हूँ तो ओवर क्राउडेड दिखता है मंदिर में. और बहुत खुशी की बात है कि लेट 90s में वो सब सारी चीजें डिस्टर्ब हो चुकी थी. So insurgency का तो that reason particularly Madhya region from where I also belong, from Bihar side, उस सब जगहों पे काफी असर पड़ गया था. लेकिन अब चीजें फिर से बैक टू सेफ आ रही. People are coming not just from India to places like Janakpur, but from Pokhara and other parts of Hirawala. ये चीजें नेपाल के भीतर में भी टूरिज्म जो है काफी ये हो रहा है. So that part I think is not a matter of big concern. About other things which you have rightly pointed out, people connect है जो civilization values हैं उनको लेकर respect रखना ही चाहिए आगे भी. My friend Janisant ji had highlighted that कि रोटी बेटी का संबंध and all these things. So I don't think that needs to be mentioned now because in any way we have to be careful about people who connect. We have to really value it. So roti beti ka sambandh ya with any other name, that should prevail. Beti roti ka sambandh is not anything negative. It's just reflecting on the deep people connect we have. The kind of connect I have that kind of connect. So that should go on with this name or something else. But we are a spiritual community in both the countries, and we are talking business, hardcore business, be publishing, payment system, hydroelectricity. But side by side, we also recognize the virtue of power, civilizational value. So where is nothing wrong? It's very good, I think. And credit should be given to our policymakers. We're sitting with two very senior policymakers here. So, and we are on the same page most of the times. And always, I think, the next is, sir, your turn. You wrote a beautiful, wonderful book called Document that is something related to mysticism in the world and deep civilizational values interconnect with India. So, can you please brief the audience about the book and how you wrote it, how you said it?
Thank you, Aditi. I'm going to get the audience back on track on writing.
The book is published by Vajra, which is a Nepali publisher.
I'm a writer and I tell stories. I'm a storyteller. And I tell you right up front, if you're going to write a good book, unless people know about it, it could be the best book in the world, but nobody's going to read it. So you need, as everybody has pointed out, you need a good publishing or a platform where the book can be sold. People have to get to know that you've written a good book. I write faction. It's fiction and fact. Mixed. Somebody calling the word faction. So I have a central theme which is fact. And then I weave my story into that theme. And I just finished a book called Dakini. It took me about 12 years to finish. It's a 4-part series. So it's just not one novel. It's really thick. So when you look at it, maybe you get a shock. So it's about 900 pages. It's outside if you want to have a look at it before you go. It's at the reception. And I have the book. The first 2 books is about the flight of the Dalai Lama. Then the other book is about the flight of the Karma path. So I weave mysticism, philosophy, Zen. A lot of that goes into my storytelling. I try and make it interesting by mixing fact and fiction because people will say, oh, this happened. But did this happen? That's when my fiction comes in. So it makes it more interesting to read, And these 4 books in the series has a lady as the 3. There are 4 people who are the main characters. 3 of them are women, because I believe that Shakti is woman. That's why we worship Shakti as woman, and the female, when we go to war and all that in the past. So I have 3 females and one a male figure. The females are like the yin and yang, and the male figure is like the catalyst who gets things done. Likewise, what I think, like when you look at the map of South Asia, you have Buddhism in the north, a sea of Buddhism. In the south, you have a sea of Hinduism. And in the middle is Nepal, a small country that has been able to mix both of them into Vajrayana and exported it into Tibet. So likewise, there's this opportunity which we still are missing to get these two together in Nepal. Somehow, we are missing this opportunity. So if you would like to have a look or read the book, it's outside. There's some place here, my distributors selling it.
Thank you very much. The book is highly recommended. I have the privilege of reading it. If we go and read it, it will take time, but it will reward.
I forgot to tell you, most of the people, the readership in Nepal that are coming out in English have a good publisher. You haven't heard of me. I've been writing for the past 20 years. It's a hobby. But the guys you actually hear, or the ladies you actually hear about, have a platform which promotes them. So I would, if you write, especially in English and in Nepal, you have to have somebody who can promote you.
What's your take on the overall changing nature of bilateral justice? Please put your think and perspective.
Thank you, Atulji. Nepal's strength lies in its diversity, and I think that is equally true for India. Both these two countries are intact, have sustained centuries, and thriving in this 21st century now is because of its diversity. And a small reflection of the diversity also I can see in the panel. People here in the panel have talked about hydropower, about UPI, about translation, about Nepal-India relations, and also writing a book. Now I have to put another dimension to this diversity. And what I'm going to tell you is, I think Nepal has to do a SWOT analysis. I'm a student of management, strength, weakness, threat, and opportunity. And by doing a SWOT analysis in a very unbiased and without any prejudiced way, perhaps we'll be able to find out where exactly Nepal lies and where its future direction goes towards, and what are the possibilities, what are the threats, and what are the challenges. See, Nepal is situated between these two extremely big, giant economies, China and India. China and India together hold about 40% of the consumers of the world. These two countries has about 27% of the world GDP share in PPP terms. And these two countries have about more than half of of Asia's wealth among themselves. So Nepal is just between these two extremely dynamic, aggressively moving world giants, and there lies an opportunity where Nepal can tap, number one. Also, Nepal has to see that India has set a target for itself to meet its 50% of energy need out of clean energy by 2030. Also, Bangladesh has set a target that by 2050, at least 40% of its energy is going to be clean. There lies an opportunity for Nepal. Traditionally, we say that Nepal has a capacity of about 83,000 megawatt of electricity production. very few people know from where this data came, or this number came. I heard that a PhD student who was doing some kind of PhD on energy from Russia about 40 years back gave this number of 83,000 megawatt. At the time, the technology was different. Now I think from the same river, we can have 3, 4, 5, up to 6 hydropower dams, and we can produce more electricity. So according to modern estimate, Nepal's total energy production capacity is somewhere close to 250,000 megawatt. If you go by that number, and if we look at this energy need of our two neighbors, India and Bangladesh, there lies our future. I would also like to highlight Excellency Shankar Sharma said just a while back that Nepal has to make a choice. There can be more than 100 issues that would be the hot button issues, or the trigger issues, or the action issues. We can talk about 1950 treaty, we can talk about Kosi, Gandaki, Mahakali, we can talk about Susta and whatnot. We can also talk about this Kalapani and Limpoadhura. We can talk about whether Buddha was born in India or Nepal. We can talk about this very latest issue, Sita. One entire movie was banned in Nepal, and also I think it saw some trouble time in India. So we have to make a choice whether we want to limit our conversation, our discourses to these issues that would need endless discourses, or we keep on discussing on these things in a very positive, constructive manner and give ourselves some time to solve these issues, but at the same time, we try to move ahead. And when we think of moving ahead, again, Nepal has to find out what exactly would be the model that it would like to adopt. For an example, do you know which is the richest country in Asia? It's Singapore. Singapore is a very unique economy for its fantastic...
Which has a size of less than half of that.
Yeah. Singapore is exactly in size of Kathmandu Valley, 222 square miles or 420 square kilometers. But it has fantastic facilities of, let's say, hangars and ports and whatnot. Forget Singapore. The second richest country in Asia is Qatar. Qatar has petrodollar. It can do anything. I can let's forget that one. The country that Nepal should look at and maybe trying to emulate is the third richest country of Asia. And you know which is that one? The third richest country of Asia is Israel. And I look at Israel, it's a very small country. When it started...
Here we are concerned about bilateral ties.
Yeah, I'm coming to that point. So when we talk about Israel, it's a very difficult country. About 75% either desert or rocky. But it focused entirely on R&D, research and development. And all the modern high-tech steps if you see in the world come from Israel. So what I'm trying to say is that the kind of economic model Nepal should be going for would be to invest on our people, make them capable enough, and think of something that can outdo the products that we find in India and China. And R&D, I think, is one of the ways. But on contrary, what we have done is we have tied up our hands and legs, and we have sent all our youths to Middle East, to Malaysia, and to other countries, and we have made them the workers. So I think here we need a fresh approach, whereby we should be able to see where the market is, where there are the opportunities. And if there are some small irritants, as I said, there can be more than 100, let's keep them aside for now, and let's move towards in a direction whereby we can make ourselves involved in a more productive way, both in terms of relationship of our neighbors, especially with India, and try to see that we work on our strengths, we tap the opportunities that is offered by India,
Also, we will realize the
and
true
have a beautiful
potential.
relationship.
Just you said that 250,000 megawatt capacity Nepal has on the day, but it is producing not even 2,500 megawatt per year.
Exactly.
So big reality set first. Going forward, we have to think in this direction. First, to augment the capacity, that will be vital, because India is ready to import that 1,000 megawatt. It's a done deal. There is no question mark on that. Second, good thing is happening that Bangladesh is also very serious in importing clean energy with Indian grid from Nepal. So opportunities are waiting, just waiting. So narrative should be set into that direction.
Exactly.
Decidedly we should work in unison and achieve that. Thank you. Now, just before conclude, I will have a very quick question to both the ambassadors. First, sir, what's your plan for writing a book? Because it's literature festival of it. So I will always keep it. I have been a literary consultant as well, a writer also. So we'll not miss this one. Please let us know. After that,
I thought you were addressing that to Ambassador Sharma.
first thing, because yeah, not in a book. I will come to you with a more complex question.
Okay. So what's your question again?
Your plan of writing a book. And chronicle your experience as an ambassador.
Yeah, I'm thinking about that one, but I think being a diplomat, as our ambassador Ranjit Ray was mentioning, and the journalist Kadambini Sharma was also mentioning, that we are jack of all, master of none. But I'm also thinking that this is one aspect. The second aspect is, as a diplomat, can you write everything that you have heard from horse's mouth in each other's countries? So I think that's also a big challenge. I think probably Ambassador Ranjit Ray can answer that one. But having said that, I think there is enough scope to write about the economic diplomacy, and things like that, which I have contributed to some extent to the writes-up in the government of Nepal, in different reports and books, and then
Absolutely, you wrote a part of Constitution as well.
Yes, I did that.
People should know about it.
Yeah, so I think I was, although I was not the member of the parliament, but I was associated with the Constitutional Assembly of Nepal for almost 1 year before going to US. And the task given to me was to write and complete the chapter on economic rights and the distribution of revenues among 3 different tiers of government. 3 different spheres, these days what they call it, 3 different spheres of government. And they told me that, because they were all ministers and MPs, until and unless this report is passed from the parliament, you cannot go to US, you will not approve it. But fortunately, that report was the first one to be approved by the parliament. Thank you.
So how was your experience writing the first book, Kathmandu Devon? And what's your new book?
Yeah,
Even
so
I'm not aware about it.
I think Ambassador Sharma has raised it's a very important issue, and I think anybody who's been in government, in diplomacy, so this is a question that constantly nags you. ये धर्म संकट का इशू एक है कि कितना लिखें, क्या लिखें, कैसे लिखें, because things can also be misunderstood. So this is it's quite a tough job, and there are 2 views. One view is no, all this is confidential and nothing should be in the public domain, and so you shouldn't write. I had a different view. My view was that this is the contemporary history of the relationship, and you must document it. You must truthfully document it, at least present it from your perspective, so that people understand, what happened, why were certain policies followed, what were the consequences. So I'm all for more transparency, frankly. And just imagine if over 50 or 60 years you have a series of books or say chronicles or accounts. You have the contemporary history of India, Nepal, or any 2 other countries in the public domain. And look at the wealth of material you'll have from scholars. And of course it should be from both sides. Because each side will give their perspective, their understanding, and every issue, as we know, has 2 sides to it. So it's very important that both sides are there, and only then will the reader or the scholar get a full sense of what is happening. And one of the main reasons I wrote the book was to provide an Indian perspective. Because there is so much misunderstanding, mistrust, prejudice, lack of awareness. So the idea was really to, try to give a rationale, a logic for what we do, why we did it, how we did it. So I'm, one for everybody writing books. The first book was easy because it was all in my mind, so I didn't really have to do very much But the second book is difficult because you really have to do a lot of research.
This year?
I haven't even. It's still in the conception
I'm
stage.
here to get the scoop for the publisher.
But
Anurag is here.
I'm fond of the mountains, so I would certainly like to do something connected to the mountains. Not necessarily country specific, but certainly the Himalayas.
Good news. It is very good. Thank you, sir. It's been a wonderful session. Because now it's time to wrap it up. I will hand over the proceedings to Samaji to take it towards conclusion.
Thank you, Atulji, for such an insight conversation. हामी पूर्व निर्धारित समयभन्दा अलिकति ढिलो गरी चलिरहेको कारणले गर्दा म कार्यक्रमलाई अलिकति छोटो आफ्नो तर्फबाट बनाउने प्रयास गरिरहेको छु। हाम्रो प्यानलिस्ट अनि मोडरेटरलाई टोकन अफ एप्रिसिएसन वितरण गरिदिनुका लागि म फेस्टिभल डाइरेक्टर ऋषि राम अधिकारीज्यूलाई पनि अनुरोध गर्न चाहन्छु। हामीसँग यस सेसनलाई मोडरेटरको भूमिका निर्वाह गर्दै हुनुहुन्थ्यो अतुल के ठाकुर, नोडल कोअर्डिनेटर, इन्डिया नेपाल सेन्टर, PSDCCI। I think we need to gather in the front for the photo opportunity as well, and also for the token of appreciation. हाम्रो स्पिकरका रूपमा हुनुहुन्थ्यो His Excellency Ambassador Dr. Shankar Sharma, Ambassador of Nepal to India. Keynote speaker पनि हुनुहुन्थ्यो। सँगसँगै हामीसँग हुनुहुन्थ्यो Ambassador Ranjit Ray, former Indian Ambassador to Nepal. हामीसँग हुनुहुन्छ Kavin B. Sharma, senior journalist पनि। यसैगरी हामीसँग अर्को senior journalist हुनुहुन्छ Mr. Deepak S.D. Rana, उहाँलाई पनि token of appreciation ग्रहणका लागि अनुरोध गर्न चाहन्छु। I have the pleasure of inviting Mr. Deepak S.D. Rana to kindly accept token of appreciation. यसैगरी हामीसँग हुनुहुन्छ Mr. Anurag Basnet, editor and translator। यसैगरी हामीसँग हुनुहुन्छ अतुल भट्टनागर पनि as a speaker for this panel। म उहाँलाई पनि token of appreciation ग्रहणका लागि अनुरोध गर्न चाहन्छु। Kindly accept token of appreciation from the festival director, Mr. Rishi Ram Adhikari। Likewise, we have Jenny San, EIDA का chairman हुनुहुन्छ। म उहाँलाई पनि token of appreciation का लागि अनुरोध गर्न चाहन्छु। Likewise, हाम्रो moderator हुनुहुन्थ्यो अतुल के ठाकुर। Atul K. Thakur, Nodal Coordinator, India Nepal Center, PSDCCI. Thank you for the lovely moderation as well. I thank every panelist right here.
Photo, please.
The photo opportunity ka lagi सँगै रहनु होला।
Sir, close, please.
Thank you, everybody. र